like electronic dance music as much as the next person, but the French, perhaps one of the earliest exponents of it, aren't the best at it now. Some of it can be really awful, and in Chateau de Vincennes there was a free concert in one of the pavilions, a large stage area in the rain is where the audience goes. There's this pavilion, there's a few other little domed folly. The French aren't very good at the English landscape garden design. The English garden you get all over the world pretty much, and it's an attempt to, like, Capability Brown, that famous landscape architect. Madame, elle veut des fleurs. Madame, elle veut des gros bouquets. But in France it has always tended to be insulted by the British and turn out a bit like a sculpture park, really. Parc de la Villette from the 80s or 90s. The red follies throughout, a large area giving focus and delineating space to a territorial way, the same as forts do in Wild West. But we know how the French love the folly. In England, Capability Brown used the folly sparingly. Little ruins or grottos, very few or far between. Madame, elle se pomponne, mascara blush et highlighter visage. In England of the time, the promenade through a park was popular, a formal tree-lined setting, where towards the furthest end of the park there would be a prostitute behind every tree trunk, where young bucks in their pantyhose could have a bunk up against the bark, and genteel society could carry on sauntering by and he could rejoin them later. Perhaps it's because French life is slightly different. The French had mastered the approach to the chateau, where just one line of plain trees could direct your view across the landscape to the chateau that you're approaching for your rendezvous, and you don't take a direct route there through plain trees on both sides. That's for directing you out towards the next town when you're on your way out. On your way in, you'll be taking a controlled spiral, getting all the views of the property in all its splendour before you arrive. Perhaps views across the water, the lake, the moat. It's historic angle, it's new additions, and perhaps it's pepper pots. And as you get towards the centre of the spiral, you engage more intimately. And round the back, more formally, in a French parterre formal garden. Pretty flowers within curly, complex geometries of box hedging. You know, the sort of thing. Those formal French parterre gardens, and close to a big house. Then off towards the stables you'll have a kitchen garden, of course, a potager. Perhaps a jardin anglais that might transition into a rolling lawn landscape kept down by sheep, kept away from the house by a ha-ha ridge. But Madame, elle parle fort, Madame se sent toujours très libre. Elle a raison, tout le monde a tort, on dirait que Madame est ivre et moi. Beyond this, there's the Bosco, as it's called in Italian Renaissance gardening. The Bosco is just the wood, the bois, controlled with sightline avenues, going off in three directions of a triangle, a central axis, and two angles either side. Sight lines, so you can perhaps see the house in the distance, but not always. Le bois, le wood, may be crisscrossed with other smaller paths, but in the most... Moi, tous les soirs je fais le canard. C'est pour madame que je fais ça. Du matin jusqu'au soir. Pour madame que je fais ça. Je fais le canard. C'est pour madame que je fais ça. Et je crois bien que j'en ai marre. Pour madame que je fais ça. wealthy French gardens, it seemed to be the way to have a folly, a grotto, or a Renaissance version of a Petit Trianon, a hunting lodge and auditorium at every single intersection of this woodland walks. More is more.
Madame fait des régimes, elle veut garder son ventre plat. Madame tient à sa ligne, pas sûr qu'elle tienne autant à moi. Madame, souvent elle crie qu'un jour...
Is more. The delight of an unusual feature of capability brain, and the picturesque lost to quantity. Oh yes, that is very nice, but we've got more. And it did serve a purpose, because these woods, just as they have been all over Europe, woods outside of cities are meeting places for sordid, clandestine, extramarital liaisons, often with members of the same sex. It could be dressed up as an Arcadian community meeting. Arcadian is just paradise. Man is triumphing over nature and transforming it into its own imagined paradise. Between these woodland walks, these tracks, crisscrossing the Bosco, it's essentially a wild woodland landscape with wildlife. You will probably have...
Madame adore qu'on la regarde, Madame perd les pédales, Madame raconte n'importe quoi, Madame se retrouve en larmes, Madame regrette son célibat.
Seen, especially in Italy, plantations of trees in rows and lines that enable the accurate straight growing of masts when ships' masts were made of wood, and straight timber for construction when buildings were made of wood. They are again now, actually.
Tous les soirs je fais le canard. C'est pour madame que je fais ça. Du matin jusqu'au soir. Pour madame que je fais ça. Je fais le canard. C'est pour madame que je fais ça. Et je crois bien que j'en ai marre. Pour madame.
But beyond the natural woodland with tracks through it, which we'll call a French sculpture park, there's the wild landscape, the farmed landscape.
Madame promène son cul sur les boulevards du Grand Paris. Madame promène son homme comme elle promène son Gucci. Madame se sent très bonne, oui, après son brushing. Madame aime les terrasses, les discussions de copines. Madame aime le champagne et donner son avis. Madame boit trop de champagne et les voyelles s'oublient. Madame, elle a raison, bien sûr que Madame est érudite. Madame a plus de réseau, Madame veut rentrer dans son lit. Madame...
But it's the man-manipulated nature that we're lost in here in Chateau Vincennes, Bois, with our fashionable streets of Paris shoes and roller suitcases, handy things, rolling through the mud. Well, not, because they'd get ruined. At least only the shoes get ruined. It'd be a goner if we're completely off track. But we don't have to go off track. It's still gritted. Or do we? Yes, you know that triangular layout. And the crisscrosses aren't regular and grid-like. But you can determine where you are and where you need to go. It may take twice as far because the arc of the path doesn't go quite how you would want it to. You may get tired of carrying your bag by its side handle. You may worry about breaking the side handle, same as breaking the wheels. You might have to carry it on your shoulder, but it's still better than going cross-country. Apart from that last little trek when you really are fighting through the bushes. Yes, a misjudgment. Of course, I suggested, I'll go and get the car, and you just wait in this cafe. And she'd have waited with the bags. I'd have jogged. Wouldn't have been any time. I'd have corrected myself, gone through the mud if necessary to speed it up. Might have been tempted to have a closer look at the music festival, but I could hear it, and it did sound a bit merde. But she didn't want to. It was all the people standing around at the underground station waiting for their friends, and the St Mand did seem very busy compared to usual. All the cafes and restaurants were just closing as well. It's always at 2 o'clock when you get somewhere you need to be, isn't it? And there are no exceptions. Can you imagine the ecstasy greater than anyone at that electronic dance music festival is experiencing when I find the right roundabout intersection on the big long axis of the free parking that I've parked on, and I see the vehicle, and I know that the foul-mooded, wonderful woman that's don't think is lost behind me, following the same bramble-strewn, thackle little track cut by deer through the woods, is going to be relieved that the rain has more or less stopped just about the time that we've got to shelter. At times during the pounding rain, almost monsoon-like, sharing the same Roland Garros umbrella. What would I have given for that Parc de la Villette Folie to shelter from? But then I wouldn't have been keeping on moving and getting to the destination and sheltering under the same parapluie. Stopping at that Folie probably wouldn't have resulted in a legs-in-the-air type adventure. And while it still was in the 1950s, the sex or blackmail, where I'm not going to show you the way back through the maze, or I'm not going to drive you home from this lover's lane if you don't get in the back seat. We've left those days behind, haven't we? Marie Antoinette, Petite Trianon, Madame de Pompadour, Madame de Barry, they all had residences in hunting lodges in the Bosco part of the main chateau landscape, where they could take their own lovers or be seen by the resident king, lord, duke. And in this landscape of
de te soucier de moi, rien qu'une fois.
love, there's going to be people that protect them and serve them, that need their spots out in the landscape to have little clandestine liaisons of amoureux. So perhaps focal points and more is more isn't so bad. What's it like after dark in your local Scotland wildlife forest nature trail?
Je ne t'aime plus, mon amour. En fait, si je crois bien que je t'aimerai toujours. Je ne t'aime plus, mon amour. En fait, si je crois bien que je t'aimerai toujours. J'en peux plus te voir pleurer, alors que c'est toi qui me fais du mal. Non mais franchement de la dignité, parfois ça te ferait pas de mal. Regarde-toi, toi tu as tout, parce que toi tu m'as moi. Et moi oui, plus je te regarde et plus je me dis que je t'aime moins.
Love, there's going to be people that protect them and serve them, that need their spots out in the landscape to have little clandestine liaisons of amoureux. So perhaps focal points and more is more isn't so bad. What's it like after dark in your local Scotland wildlife forest nature trail?
Bien sûr que je suis le plus beau, bien sûr que je suis le plus fort. Je suis pas sûr d'être mégalo, mais je sais que j'ai jamais tort. Tes copines, elles m'ont dragué, chapeau, bravo, l'amitié. Bien sûr que oui, j'ai résisté, j'ai pas songé à flancher. Tu ferais mieux de plus les voir, reste avec moi tous les soirs. Accorde-moi un peu plus de temps, montre-moi que tu m'aimes vraiment. T'as pas de problème en ce moment, et mes angoisses, t'en fais quoi? De toute manière, jamais le temps, toi de te soucier de moi, rien qu'une